Good morning. Welcome to the Stylo News Intelligence Update. It is August 18th, 2026. I'm your host, and today we're bringing you a complete Europe situation report. In this early morning explainer, we're going to calmly step back and analyze the key geopolitical events, the flashpoints, and the intelligence patterns we've seen emerge across the European continent over the last 2 weeks. Our goal today is to just deliver the facts. We want to help you understand the shifting strategic landscape, looking at the data from multiple perspectives, entirely without alarmism. Let's get right to the briefing. Before we begin, this morning's intelligence update is brought to you by ProWave AI. They're the developers behind Stylo Intel Ops. That's the advanced AI-powered open-source intelligence program used by analysts around the world. They also develop Stylo News, the commercial version you can access on demand on the web or through their mobile apps. We're relying on their data aggregation to bring you all of today's insights. Here's our roadmap for the morning. We'll start with a broad strategic overview, then zero in on the Baltic and Northern Europe, before shifting down to Ukraine and Southern Europe. Finally, we'll synthesize the broader impacts and give you an intelligence forecast. Section 1. Strategic Overview. Macro-level patterns. The biggest takeaway from the recent data is actually what we're not seeing. Analysts assess with medium to high confidence that there's no imminent, large-scale conventional war being prepared against NATO territory, places like the Baltics or Poland. We simply aren't seeing the massive troop mobilizations or the cross-border logistics staging you'd expect right before a traditional invasion. However, we are seeing a high-confidence escalation in what we call gray zone operations. It's a steady drumbeat of asymmetric pressure carefully designed to stay right below the threshold of open war. We're tracking increased airspace violations, suspicious drone activity near critical infrastructure, cyber disruptions in energy and transport sectors, and very calculated disinformation campaigns. So while a conventional attack isn't in the cards right now, the intelligence points to a highly active, deniable campaign of coercion across the continent. Section 2. Baltic and Northern Europe. Geographic flashpoints. Looking at the map, notice the strategic density right around the Suwałki corridor and the heavily militarized Russian exclave of Kaliningrad, tucked between Poland and Lithuania. And if we look further north, the broader Nordic operating environment stretches all the way up to the Barents Sea. These geographic choke points and shared borders have really become the primary testing grounds for those hybrid activities we just talked about. The focus here is clearly on probing vulnerabilities, whether that's air defense, logistics hubs, or maritime corridors. Over the last couple of weeks, we've tracked several verified incidents that highlight this pressure across a pretty wide geographic spread. In Latvia, a drone was shot down. Now, whether that was just a stray reconnaissance platform or a deliberate provocation, the impact is the same. It compresses NATO's warning timelines and puts a tremendous amount of stress on Baltic air policing. Over in Germany, authorities actually issued public warnings following suspected explosive drone activity right near the Leipzig airport logistics hub. Out at sea, we've seen record levels of GPS jamming reported near the Danish island of Bornholm. And finally, Lithuanian intelligence has warned about potential false flag operations, specifically the risk of Russia using recovered Ukrainian drones to strike Baltic infrastructure and stir up political confusion. So you can see these aren't isolated events. They represent a coordinated probing of Northern Europe's resilience. Section 3. Ukraine and Southern Europe. Conflict spillover. Now let's move down to the Southern European theater and observe how interconnected this region is. The ongoing conflict in Ukraine remains heavily concentrated around the Black Sea, including the Crimean Peninsula and the vital port of Odessa. This area acts as a crucial bridge to NATO's southeastern flank, directly affecting the coastal approaches for Romania, Bulgaria, and ultimately the Mediterranean shipping lanes. Intelligence indicates that while the kinetic fighting is largely contained inside Ukraine, its logistical and political shockwaves are actively spilling over into these neighboring areas. The data points to a few specific, indirect threats along the southern corridor. We're seeing repeated, intensive strikes on Odessa's port facilities and Danube River infrastructure. That puts direct pressure on the Black Sea Gateway, which is absolutely essential for regional commerce and alliance signaling. Further inland, there are active sabotage concerns following an incident near Bulgaria's Trans-Balkan gas pipeline. We're also seeing escalated political rhetoric, with reported threats from Moscow to seize foreign vessels, significantly raising the risk profile for commercial shipping. Meanwhile, inside Ukraine itself, things remain at a diplomatic standstill. Intelligence assessments note with high confidence that near-term peace just isn't likely right now. The peace terms proposed by both sides, territorial concessions on one hand versus strict security guarantees on the other, remain structurally incompatible. Section 4. Impacts and Perspectives, a Strategic Synthesis. We can categorize the cascading consequences of this hybrid campaign into three distinct levels. Locally, the main impact is the acute vulnerability of critical infrastructure. Civilian and logistics nodes, like the Leipzig airport, fuel depots, and the Bulgarian pipeline, are taking the brunt of these low-cost asymmetric probes. Nationally, these incidents are forcing heightened alert states. Countries like Germany and Lithuania are publicly acknowledging the hybrid threat, while national security apparatuses are under visible strain, as we saw with a recently disrupted espionage case in Sweden. And internationally, the cumulative effect is a real compression of warning timelines. Incidents like the Latvian drone shootdown force NATO to make split-second decisions, testing the alliance's air policing capabilities and overall cohesion without presenting a clear, unified target for retaliation. To understand where this is heading, we need to neutrally evaluate the motives driving the activity. Based on the intelligence estimates, the Russian strategic perspective relies heavily on coercive pressure. Their doctrine appears focused on taking small bites. They're using deniable sabotage, cyber intrusions, and false flag operations to create political shock, extract diplomatic concessions, and demonstrate NATO vulnerability on its flanks, all carefully calibrated to avoid triggering a unified Article 5 military response. On the other side, the NATO and European perspective is centered entirely on containment and resilience. Their primary objectives are maintaining alliance cohesion in the face of this ambiguity, insisting on firm security guarantees for affected members, and carefully managing these gray zone thresholds to prevent any localized incidents from spiraling into a broader conventional conflict. Section 5. Sentiment and Forecast. The Intelligence Footprint. Looking at independent open-source monitors and intelligence estimates, there's a very firm consensus right now. The tactic of small bites is going to be the defining characteristic of the European security environment for the near term. The focus has decisively shifted away from a sudden invasion toward chronic, threshold-managed coercion. Across social media sentiment and expert analysis, there is a deep skepticism regarding any immediate diplomatic breakthroughs or large-scale conventional troop movements targeting NATO. Based on this data, we've put together a watch list of events for policymakers, analysts, and the public to monitor in the coming days and weeks. First, expect continued gray zone probing. That means more localized airspace violations and sustained GPS interference, particularly over the Baltic Sea. Second, monitor for an uptick in disruptive cyber operations. Intelligence highlights transportation logistics hubs and energy infrastructure as highly probable targets for deniable disruption. And finally, stay alert to the possibility of engineered border incidents or false flag provocations, much like the spoofed drone attacks Lithuanian authorities warned about. Recognizing these patterns really is the key to understanding the news as it breaks. That concludes our Europe Situation Report for August 18th. If you find this objective analysis helpful, you can listen to our full Stylo News Intel update audio briefing on your favorite channel, or just follow the link provided in this post. We also invite you to subscribe to Stylo News for impartial AI-powered news on demand at www.stylonews.com. As hybrid warfare increasingly becomes the new normal, it leaves us with one critical question. How long can an alliance sustain constant, low-level pressure before a small bite hits a vital nerve? Thank you for listening this morning. Stay focused and have a good day.